What we're doing through this series, we're doing a series called This Is How We Do It. And we're looking at what does it look like, not just to go to church, but to be the church. And at Journey Church, there's 7 kind of code. There's a code that we go by, 7 beliefs that allow us to live that out. How do we actually live that out, to be the church? And the code I want to talk about this weekend is we live in expectancy. Just turn to 2 people and say, we live in expectancy. But this sounds great as a quote, but it's hard to do in real life. And the reason it's hard to do in real life is that life does not go the way you expect it to go. Life doesn't go the way you expect it to go. You ever bought something online and you thought it was going to be one thing, but it turned out to be a totally different thing? I remember several years ago, Shane and I wanted to get away. And so I went on eBay and it said, a luxurious 5-star rustic cabin in the middle of the woods. And I thought, well, this is going to be nice. So I clicked on eBay and I said, I'll rent it. We'll go. And so Shane and I went and we showed up at this place. And I was expecting this incredibly glorious rustic cabin in the middle of the woods, you know, and waterfalls all around it. It was literally a shack in the back of a guy's yard. And I said, that's not what I bought. That's not what I expected. And so needless to say, we had to find another place to stay. Have you ever gone in a situation where you go, this is not the way I expected it to go? Anybody? This is not the way I expected it to go? We've been there. And when life doesn't go the way you expected, that's when it's hard to live in expectancy. And so I want you to turn to 2 Kings 5 because I want to introduce you to a character of a person in the Bible that really struggled with these things. Life did not go the way he expected, but yet he began to live with expectancy and how he got there. And his name is Naaman. And I'm very familiar with Naaman because I feel like I see him every day and I see him in the mirror because Naaman reminds me so much of myself. And I want to show you the process of what he begins to do, what God begins to do in his life. And just kind of spoiler alert so that you kind of know what's about to happen. Naaman has leprosy, but God is going to heal him. That's the plot. But how he gets there, how God begins to move in his life really teaches us how to live in expectancy. And so I want to begin to read this narrative. And as I do, I'm going to interject some thoughts of how you and I can live in this. Because how do you live with expectancy when life doesn't go the way you expected? And so Naaman enters in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1. It says, now Naaman was a commander of the army of the king of Aram. Aram was the most powerful army at the time. And he was a great man in the sight of his master. And he was highly regarded because through him, the Lord God had given victory to Aram. And he was a valiant warrior. Do you see all the accolades it's putting up? It says he was a commander of the most powerful army in the world. Now at this time, war heroes were considered the celebrities of the day. When the war heroes showed up, everybody began to take respect. I mean, Naaman was the guy that people would buy posters of. I mean, Naaman was the guy who would go on YouTube and everybody would subscribe because he was an influencer. I mean, Naaman had success, he had power, he had money, he had fame. It was like he had a script of how his life wanted to end up and everything was going according to plan. And the accolades are just over and over gushing for Naaman. He was a commander of the most powerful army of the world at the time. He was a great man. He was highly regarded and he was a valiant warrior. And if it put a period there, you would think, well, everything going as expected for Naaman. But it's the next statement. It says he was a valiant warrior, but, shout but, he had leprosy. Now that's a big but. It's a very, very big but in the Bible. Because everything in his mind was going according to plan, but then something happened that was unexpected. And we don't know how it happened, but one day he just showed up and maybe it was a little scar, but then it began to spread and it began to spread in his whole entire body. And at the time, leprosy was the most dreaded disease anyone would ever want. Literally, your body would explode slowly by slowly process and the scabs would get bigger and the infection would get larger and it would kill you. It would kill you in a slow dying death. And so here's Naaman. Everything was great, but he had leprosy. Everything was going amazing, but he had leprosy. He had a great job, but he had leprosy. He had success, but he had leprosy. And here's what I began to realize is that everybody has a but. Everybody has a but. Everybody has a but. Now, I'm not talking anatomy, all right? I'm not talking anatomy. I'm staying true to the text. So before you shoot off an email or a text message, I'm just staying true to the text because I want you to see this. Everybody has a but. You have a but, I got a but, we all got a but. Turn to somebody and say, you got a but. Just shout it. If you're in the coffee shop watching this or on the treadmill, will you just shout it? Everybody has a but. We all do. And this is what makes it so tough, is that we begin to say, okay, God, will you use me? But we begin to think of all the things that we can't be used by. We begin to think of all the things that are wrong. I'm successful, but I feel so worthless. I got the job promotion, but I had to sacrifice my family. So I have no relationship with my teenagers anymore. I'm surrounded by people, but yet I feel so lonely. It looks like life is going according to plan on the outside, but inside, I feel wrecked. This is Naaman. You see, everybody has a but, and the but is really, really big. And this is where we struggle to live with expectancy, because we just go, well, you don't understand. But leprosy. And he's struggling because he can't see past it. There is no healing for this. There is no way to get over this. It's not like he hasn't gone to the doctors. It's not like he hasn't prayed about this. It's not like he hasn't sought remedies. Nothing is going right. It just seems like he's stuck. He's trapped in the very thing that he can't get around. And he wants to look forward to life. He wants to go forward in life, but yet he can't really have hope. But he's living in leprosy. But this problem is too big. But this issue, it can't overcome. You don't understand. But, and we all got one. And so he's living in this defeat. But verse 4, it says, or verse 2, it says, now a band of raiders from Iran had gone out and taken captive a young girl from Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. And she heard about the situation. And she said to her mistress one day, but if only my master would see the prophet Elijah, then he surely could heal him. God can redeem this situation, who is in Samaria. He would surely cure him of his leprosy. And what I love about this girl is she sees the reality of the leprosy. But did you notice what she did? Can I show you what she did in the text? Naaman is stuck here and he feels helpless and he's just going, but I got this problem, but I got this situation. And many of you, this is where you stay stuck. But I can't be a dad. I didn't have a dad to teach me. I can't do that. But I'm just a single dad. But I can't do what God wants me to do because I just don't have enough. I want to live in freedom, but I'm just struggling by this addiction. And we sit here and we can't see past this huge butt that we're facing. But what she began to do is she was able to see past it, and see what she did? She moved the butt. Do you see what she's doing? She's saying leprosy doesn't define you. Leprosy is not what is impossible, but God. Not but leprosy, but God. Shout, but God. This changed the narrative. She was able to look past the very thing that Naaman could not look past. She was able to see with hope that God could do impossible things in impossible situations. She was able to see there was hope even when there looked like everything was hopeless. This is the essence of expectancy. She says, Naaman, yes, leprosy is bad, but God can still heal. But God can still redeem. But God can still move. But God can still work in powerful ways. It looks like the end, but it's not the end. But God can still do it. But God can still do it. But God can still do it. Now, Naaman has a choice because he can see the leprosy. I hope you get this text. He can see the leprosy, but for the first time, somebody has put a new butt in front of him. All he could see was what could not go right. All he could see was what was falling apart. All he could see is what was wrong. It doesn't take faith to talk about everything that's wrong in your life. It's easy to get caught up in pessimism and despondency, losing hope because you get stuck here. But she was able to see past it, but Naaman has to make a decision. Is he going to concentrate just on his leprosy? Is he going to live in his butt leprosy, or is he actually going to move his butt? I hope you understand this. But will he move his butt to believe that God can do something even in the middle of the things he can't control? And so look what he does. By faith, Naaman went to his master and he told him what the girl from Israel had said. Now, this took incredible courage because to do this, he would actually have to go to the king and tell the king, oh, by the way, all of our gods in Aram, they can't do anything for me. Our gods are impotent. I need the real God to stand up. This took courage, right? To enter in and to ask the king, to say to the king, hey, the gods that we serve can't heal me. I need to go to the real God. And so he goes to the king and tells him, and the king says in verse 5, by all means go, the king of Aram replied. I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So Naaman left. He moved his butt and taken with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 of shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. Your situation you're in can either lead you to despondency or it can be the very catalyst where you begin to see how God moves in supernatural ways to do the impossible. But to get there, to live with expectancy, you have to begin to move your butt. It's the only way. If you want to begin to live in expectancy, there has to come a point where you say, yes, I struggle with this, but this doesn't define me. Yes, I'm dealing with this, but it doesn't lock me in. My God is bigger than this. My God is greater than this. You see, Naaman could have very easily said, well, you don't understand. No one's ever been cured of leprosy. I'm a dead man walking. What's the reason to get out of bed in the morning? What's the reason to keep going? There's no cure for this. There's no way out of this. I can't fight my way out of this. I can't succeed my way out of this. You see, Naaman was a man where he set his mind on it, it would happen. But he can't set his mind on healing because he can't cure himself. God sometimes will place you in impossible situations, not because he's trying to kill you or to destroy you, because he wants to open you up to the possibility of what he could do if you would just trust him. You see, Naaman had to get to a point where he had to get to the end of his resources and say, I know I have leprosy, but leprosy doesn't define me, but God can still heal me, but God can still work through me, but God can still move in powerful ways in my life. You see, so many times you take yourself out of the very thing that God wants to do in your life because you can't get past the butt that you're dealing with. But this addiction, but this abuse, but this betrayal, but this heartache, but this loss of job, but, you don't understand. You don't understand, but, and here's how we go through life. You don't understand, but you don't understand, but you don't understand. And every time we're faced of looking forward into the future, we can't move forward in the future because we're just stuck on the big but that's right here. But there has to get a point where you say, I know this but is big, but my God is bigger. I know my God can do the impossible. And that's where you have to begin to shift the very aspect of your mind and begin to understand the power of when you begin to say, but God. You're not denying the problem. You're not denying the situation. Naaman is not going, well, leprosy is great. He's not saying, yes, I got leprosy. He's saying it's still bad. But for the first time in his life, he has hope again. Because he's not allowing the leprosy to be the end of his story. Whatever you're facing is not the end of your story. Whatever you're dealing with is not the end. God can still move. But in order to get there, you got to move your butt and begin to say, but God. I'm telling you how many times this has encouraged my heart. When I begin to talk about and tell God all the things that I can't do because of the situations I'm in, I remind myself, no. Yes, it's a struggle. Yes, it's a heartache. Yes, this is tough. Yes, this is painful. Yes, this is difficult. But God, if you will begin just to train your refrain, if you will begin to just speak that into the reality of your situation, that's what fuels expectancy. But God, yes, I struggle with addiction, but God has given me freedom. Yes, I've struggled with abuse, but God has brought me healing. Yes, I might be diagnosed with cancer, but God can still heal me. Yes, I might be struggling, but my God has overcome and I'm more than a conqueror through Jesus Christ. I know this feels like it's overwhelming me and I don't feel like I have enough strength to keep going. I never signed up. Life didn't go the way I planned it. I didn't predict to be a stay-at-home single mom trying to struggle and make it with the kids. I didn't understand this. This was not in my plan for life, but God can give me the strength to get through anything that I'm facing. But God can heal me, but God can redeem me, but God can free me, but God can help me, but my God is my salvation, but God is my rock, but God is my redeemer, but God, he can take me, he can heal me, he can redeem me. And so God, I'm moving the butt of my excuses and I'm beginning to say, yes, this is hard, but you don't know my God. My God is bigger than the situation that I'm facing. This is the essence of faith. You see, when you think about faith, this is the heartbeat of faith. Paul writes this in Romans chapter 4. He says, he's writing about Abraham. And Abraham's not denying the problem. But look what he says, when everything was hopeless, You feel that way sometimes, don't you? I know I do. God, it feels hopeless. Sometimes it's hard to get out of bed in the morning. God, it feels hopeless. But he said, when everything was hopeless, Abraham, what did he do? He believed anyway. Well, how did he do that? How did he do that? Is this word, deciding. Faith is a yielding of your will to look at the situation you're facing and going, this is hard, this is tough, but this does not define me. This is tragic, but this is not the end of my story. I might have leprosy, but I still believe that God can heal. That's expectancy. You see, so he decided. What have you decided to speak over the situations you're dealing with? There has to be a decision of your will, a yielding of your will, where you begin to believe that God can do the impossible. Yes, this is hard, but God. So he decided to live not on the basis of what he saw he couldn't do. Do you see where he's going to move his butt? Because he could have easily said, but I don't see a way happening. But I don't see how this could transpire. But I don't see a way out of this mess. But I don't understand how this can go on. But he didn't. He said, but he decided, I'm going to view and I'm going to base my life on what God can do. But on what God said he would do. And so Abraham said, I'm not being defined by the butt of my problem. I'm being defined by the butt of what God can do. But God can do the impossible. So I'm believing again. I don't know who needs to hear this, but maybe for the first time, you're getting some hope back again, because it's not denying the problem. It's just saying, but God, it's moving the butt to the right place. Saying, I'm not trapped in this anymore. I'm not stuck here anymore. I'm not defined by this anymore, but my God is bigger than this, greater than this, more magnificent than this. But God, shout, but God again. But God. So Naaman moved his butt and he said, God, I'm believing again. You see, do you really believe that God can do the incredible things in and through you? Do you really believe that God has a plan for you? Do you believe that? You see, it's easy to go, bud, you don't understand. No, I don't. But God can do the impossible in your life. And so he goes and skip down to verse 9. So Naaman went with his horses and his chariots, and he stopped by the door of Elijah's house, the prophet of God. And he was ready for healing. So he stops right in front of his house. Now, Naaman, again, is a very important man. So he expects, I don't know, maybe Elijah to come out in a black, SUV, Hummer, Uber style, pick him up and whisk him forward in healing. I don't know, but he comes in with his mindset of how God should move because he's an important person. And so in verse 10, it says, so he just stood out there in the front of the door. And Elijah, I love this, Elijah sent a messenger. So Elijah doesn't even come out because God told Elijah, I'm going to heal Naaman. So Elijah says, I don't need to show up when God says he's going to do something. That's another sermon. Elijah sent his messenger to say to him, good news. Leprosy, it doesn't define you. Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be cleansed. You can't be healed, but God can cleanse you. This is the greatest news in the world. God, for the first time, Naaman hears that he can actually be cleansed from the very thing that there is no cure. There's no essential oils that will heal the leprosy. There's no pharmaceutical engineer that can create something to heal him at this time. He's lost unless God shows up, and he shows up and God says, I will do the impossible in the middle of your life because you moved your butt. I'm about to move in your life, Naaman. Do you trust me? And this should be the most incredible, happy day in Naaman's life. This should be over the top. I mean, God is going to do what no one thought could happen. So verse 11 is a little shocking to me. But Naaman went away angry. Say what? Say what? You should be rejoicing. but you're angry? God's willing to move, but you're angry? That doesn't make sense to me, right? This should be the most glorious, incredible day. I mean, you've come with a sense of expectancy, Naaman. And God says he's willing to show up. And God says he's willing to move. God says he's willing to move with power. You traveled 90 miles and God answered you at this place. It's incredible. But he said he went away angry. It makes me wonder why. It's the next two things that he states. But Naaman went away angry and he said the most dangerous words, I thought. Ooh. God, I thought. You see, God, I had a plan. And God, I thought your plan would be my plan. Because after all, I think it's the best plan because I wouldn't have thought about it if it wasn't a good plan. And so God, I thought. You thought what, Naaman? I thought that he would surely come out here to me and he would stand and he'd call on the name of the Lord, his God, and he would do some hocus pocus. He would kind of wave his hands over the spot and he would cure me of my leprosy. I mean, I got all these people. I got 75 tons of stuff that I just brought in the middle of the desert, and I need God to move in a powerful way. I thought God would show up in the way I thought he would show up, and I thought Elijah would pull out and give me all the stops. I thought he would go over the top because in my mind, that's how God would do it if I was doing it. Well, what makes you think that way, Naaman? Are not Abana and Parphar, the rivers of Damascus, better? Isn't my way better, God? Isn't my plan better, God? Isn't my vision of my life better? Isn't my timing better, God? Come on, this is what rips us from expectancy. We came with expectancy, but we think our way is better. And so he's mad. Couldn't I wash in a cleaner river? Why do I got to go down to the dirty Jordan? Why do I got to go down to the dirty river? Why do I got to wash in those waters? Isn't my way better? Isn't it better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them? I didn't even have to travel this 90 miles. Couldn't I be cleansed in an instant? So he turned away and he went off in rage. Dip yourself in the Jordan, Naaman. And he goes, I want to be healed. I'll do anything for healing, but I won't do that. I want God to move, but I don't want him to move that way. I want God to heal. Just don't heal that way. I want God to work. Just don't work that way. You see, we begin to prescribe to God how we think he should work. And he walked away in rage. He was about to walk away from the miracle and walk 90 miles back, knowing he would die. 90 miles back, knowing that he would die because he could not understand how God could move in a way that he could not understand. And I wonder how many times I'm just like Naaman. I wonder how many times I thought, and it puts me into a tailspin in my life. I thought. And this is the warning. Expectancy begins to lead you, but what begins to happen as you live with expectancy is you begin to place expectations upon the living God. And there's a difference between expectancy and expectations. Expectancy says, God, I believe you can move however you want to move. I believe you can work however you want to work. I believe you can do it because, God, you're powerful. So I'm living in expectancy. But the tension is, as you start living with expectancy, you begin to think, well, if God is going to do it, here's how he should do it. And you begin to put faith in your expectations, and you take faith off the living God, and you put more faith in your expectations. And when God doesn't meet your expectation, it rocks your world. In fact, that's the reason many of you have walked away from the faith. That's why many of you are tempted to walk away from faith. It's not that God's not moving. God's moving. He's just not moving in the way you thought he should move. And you can't see past that, and I can't see past that in the moment because I have these expectations that I place with God, and my expectations have pushed me to prescribe to God the resolution of how I want God to work, and when I want God to work, and how I want God to work, and how I really believe that God should work in my favor. And I'm wondering, has your expectancy created expectations that you placed upon God? And if you're really honest with yourself, you rage at everybody, but the reason that you're raging is there's a rage deep within you, but not because you're mad at everybody else. Ultimately, if you were honest with yourself, you're ultimately mad at God. God, if you're good, why? God, if you're loving, why? God, if you're powerful, why? And when you begin to say those things, what you begin to do in your mind is you've allowed expectancy to become expectations, and that's dangerous. Very dangerous. This is the struggle. This is the struggle. This is my struggle. See, I'm talking more to myself than I am to you, because I'll tell you why. Last year, we're heading into our expansion offering. We're going to ask you to give over and beyond on December 10th and 11th. So we can continue to go forward in the vision that God has given us. So last year, every year we do this. And so last year I did the same thing, and I got up and I shared with you about where God was leading. And one of the things I shared where God was really leading is for us to buy a portable, or not a portable, a permanent location for our DeLand location. To bring them from portable, they meet right now in DeLand High School. Thank you, DeLand High School. And for those who are there right now, I know you're there. And so I really felt, and we as elders, we prayed and we sensed that God was leading this for us to find a permanent facility. And so I stood up here and I was like, come on, we got this. God's going to move. We're 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 going to move. And I'm coming with a lot of expectancy, believing that God is going to allow us to enter into a permanent facility, our DeLand location. And I'm thinking in my mind, surely this is going to happen by summer. It didn't. Surely it's going to happen by August. It didn't. Then I start getting worried, because I know I have to get up in front of you and ask you to continue to give, and I'm asking you to continue to give for something that hasn't been accomplished yet. And I'm thinking in my mind, they're going to think I'm stupid. God, I feel like a failure. God, I just want to quit because, God, I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand. And it's not because we weren't diligent. No, we kept going forward, and I expected we could just show up and look at someone in the eye and say, hey, we want to lease this place from you, and kind of just start a lease agreement with you in a permanent facility. And so we went to owners of commercial properties, and we looked them in the face, said, hey, we're willing to do this. We gave them all of our credentials, gave all of our bank records. I mean, we laid it all down. We laid down all the things we've talked with all the people, and the things that we've consulted with to lay down to understand, hey, this is where we want to go. We want to come. We want to lease this place. And we looked the owner in the eye, and here's what the owner said: I don't rent to churches. Ooh, hold on. Maybe you didn't hear what I say. I'm not asking you to give it to us. I'm willing to pay the full lease agreement. No, we don't lease to churches. Say what? Isn't that illegal? So now I get now I'm mad. So I'm going to Pastor Justin. Justin oversees all of our HR and all of our management business thing. So I'm going to HR, and I'm sitting down to Justin. I'm like, Justin, we got to sue this guy. This is illegal. He can't do that. He's discriminated. And he goes, Pastor James, how would it look for us to sue the person who owns the building that we are about to lease them from, and we might win the case, but we lose the reason we're doing it in the first place? And so I looked him in the eye and I said, shut up, Justin. I don't like what you're saying. And Pastor John was like, we can do this. We can do this. And I'm going, I just can't see a way. So now it's a year later, and we're still meeting at DeLand High School. Do I still believe that God is going to lead us to a permanent location? Yes. Can I preach my sermon to myself and believe it? That's the hard part. Because I got my expectations. And when those expectations aren't met, I feel struggling. I feel defeated. And I get angry. And I've had to learn to walk through these things, to be the leader that God has called me to be and to lead you. I got to look past my expectations and continue to believe that God is going to bring us to a place. We just don't know where. God's going to bring us to a place. I just don't know when. And I have to be all right with that, trusting that God can do more than I can do. See, that's the difference between living in expectation and expectancy. And I'm curious, are you still struggling with expectations? And so Naaman is about to walk away. This floors me. And what would have happened if he would have continued on? He never would have experienced the movement that God wanted him to experience. All because I thought. So he's walking back 90 miles. He's walking back till one of his servants has some sense. In verse 13, so Naaman's servant went to him and said, oh, my father, my father, my father. If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, the way that you thought it should work, would you have not have done it? And Naaman's like, yes, I would have done it. If he would just told me what I wanted to hear, I would have done it. If he would just done it my way, I would have done it. But he said, well, how much more than when he tells you to go wash and be cleansed? Naaman, are you willing to surrender your expectations so that you can see God do more than you can imagine? If you want to live in expectancy, you have to surrender your expectations. There has to come a point where you say, God, I don't know how. God, I don't know when. But my faith is not in my expectations. My faith is in the character of who you are. God, I don't know. I thought I'd be healed by now. I thought we'd be in a permanent location by now in DeLand. I thought we'd already be looking forward to planting more churches. I thought we'd have more churches planted in the nation of Haiti. I thought, and it's what I thought keeps me up in the middle of the night. My thoughts are what keep me from going to sleep. My thoughts are what create this rage within me, and I get angry. And if I'm honest, my anger isn't at my wife or my kids or the situation. If I'm honest, my anger is at God. That God, why are you not doing it my way? But if I live that way, I'm going to live in rage and despair. I'm going to get pessimistic and cynical. And some of you are there. There's no joy in your life. There's no hope in your life. You're cynical and you're bitter because you've built your faith on some expectation. If you were good, this is how you would do it. And God says, don't you understand that maybe my plans are bigger than your plans? Maybe I know something that you don't know. Maybe that what I know is greater than what you could ever comprehend. Maybe I want to bless you more than you want to be blessed. And if you would just trust me through the process, I will show you things you've never thought possible, because my plans are not to destroy you or harm you, but to bless you and to favor you and to bring you into the very promise that I've given you. Are you willing to put aside your expectations and trust that God, I'm going to live in expectancy? You do what you want to do, and I'm making room for you to move however, God, you want to move. Because God, my trust is not in what I believe is best. My trust is that you are better. This is our expectancy. I don't know why God does certain things that he does. But I'm not going to allow what I thought was better to keep me from the very movement of God and where God wants to bring me. So are you willing to surrender your expectations? Are you willing to say, God, I trust you, I trust you, I trust you. God, your way is better. God, your way is better. God, your way is better. Turn to two people and tell them, God, your way is better. God's way is better. God's way is better. So I'm resting in that. So Naaman comes to his senses and he takes this incredible step of laying down his expectations to do what God has called him to do. And go to verse 14. I want to show you this. And so he went down. Shout, he went down. Sometimes you got to go low to be lifted up high. He went down. Everybody's watching him. Think about it. He's brought an army with him. And everybody's watching him. And they're seeing Naaman go down to the dirty Jordan River. And he dipped himself in the Jordan. How many times? 7. 7 times is the number of completion. 7 times. As the man of God told him, he went on what God said and he obeyed. And his flesh was restored. And I love this because it could have put a period there. But it says not his flesh was restored. It said, and became clean like that of a young boy. God did more than he expected or he ever could think about. You see, Naaman was just wanted to be cleansed, but God did more than cleanse him. He made his skin like he was a young boy again. God turned back time and God did what only he could do to show Naaman how big he really was. But in order for Naaman to get there, Naaman had to go down to the Jordan and he had to dip how many times? How many times? How many times? Now that's the struggle, because here's why. Everybody's watching him. He dips once, he gets up. Nothing. People are starting to freak out now, right? Maybe this was a joke. Maybe Elijah was playing a game on him. Ha ha! Pranked you. I'm going to trust. Second time. Nothing changing. Third time. Nothing changing. Fourth time. Nothing changed. This is where I start getting weary. Anybody else? God, I'm doing like you told me to do. Nothing changing. Fifth time. This is when I think everybody's going, maybe we shouldn't have told him to listen. Sixth time. Nothing. And what if Naaman at that point said, I'm done? I'm done. I did what God said, but nothing happened. But praise God. He went down one more time. God, I'm going to do it again. Not because it looks right, but because you said to do it. Not because it feels right, because God, right now I feel stupid. But God, I'm going to do it because you told me to do it. And so God, if you told me to do it, I'm going to dip 7 times. And he went down in that 7th time. And when he got back up, 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 God said, I'm going to do what only I can do. And he looked at his skin and said, it's better than it was when I first showed up. It's better. It's better. It's better. That's the power of my God. And so I don't know who needs to hear this, but I know you're in the middle of it and God wants you to hear, you got to keep on dipping. You got to keep on dipping. I know you did it once and it didn't happen. Do it again. I know you did it 2 times. It didn't work. Do it again. I know you did it 3 times. Do it again. I know you did it 4 times. Do it again. You keep doing it till God says and does what he promised he was going to do. You keep dipping. You keep dipping. You keep dipping. You keep dipping. Push 3 people and say, keep on dipping. I know you want to give up. I know you want to quit. I know you're tired. I know you're weary. I know you want to stop living with expectancy. But what would have happened if Naaman would have stopped on 6? What are you about to miss out on? Because God says, keep loving. Keep forgiving. But God, they haven't asked me, and I don't feel like forgiving. I know I'm not asking you to forgive for them. I'm asking you to forgive because I want to free you. God, but I don't understand. I know you don't understand. Keep giving. But God, I don't understand. I don't understand. It's hard for me to live on what I got. And you say to give? Yes, God says, you keep giving. I'll keep blessing. You see, where are you? I don't know what God has called you to do, but I know that God will fulfill his promises. So you keep dipping and you keep dipping and you keep dipping and you keep dipping. And it says in verse 15, then Naaman and his attendants, he went back. He went back to the man of God and he stood before him and he said, now I know Ooh, now I know. Now I know that there is no other God like in all the world except the God of Israel. Now I know there is a true God who can turn things around. Now I know there is a God who can do the impossible. So here's my 3 questions. I got 3 questions for you. Are you trusting God to move in extraordinary ways? Are you trusting God to move in extraordinary ways, or are you just consumed on your butt? Are you open to what God has planned, even if it's not according to your plan? God, I surrender my expectations. I'm trusting in you. And are you willing to keep dipping when it seems nothing is happening? God, I'm going to keep trusting. I'm not going to stop. You see, this is what it means to be people of faith. This is what it looks like to live in expectancy. A couple months back, there was a guy named Xavier who was on his way to the park. He struggled with addiction, and he was struggling with some things in the middle of his life. So he said, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of it. And he was going to the park, and his plan was, I'm going to get so high, I'm going to die. I'm done living. So Xavier got up one Sunday and was heading to the park to get high to die. And at that time, Matt and Ann Bixler were heading down, and Matt and Ann were heading to our Deltona location. And as they're heading to our Deltona location, they're saying, God, would you use us? And instead of going to church, they decided, God, we're going to be the church. And the Spirit of God told him, they saw Xavier walking down the side of the road, and the Spirit says, stop and ask him to come to church with you. And they said, this is crazy, God. But they stopped because they were willing to trust that God was willing to move. When we think about our expansion offering, this is the reason that Shane and I give sacrificially. We give because we live with expectancy, believing that God can do more through what we give than if we just hoarded it. This is why we live as the church, and this is why we're challenging you. This is why we come together and we say we want to live in expectancy, and so God, we're going to be obedient. So Matt and Ann, they live with this expectancy, and I want you to hear what happened in their story. This is why we prepare ourselves. This is why we live in expectancy, and this is why we give sacrificially. Because you have no clue what God can do if you just say, God, use me. Watch what happens when you live in expectancy. Watch their story.
Very put together. So before that suit, what happened?
It's only appropriate. It's only appropriate. Before me getting serious and before me realizing that if I continued down my path I was going down, I was gonna end up 2 places, dead or jail. Has no 401k, has no business plans. Chasing a cloud that I was never gonna catch.
What's that on your shirt?
This? This?
Yeah.
Teardrops. And yellow is the color of deceit. Hold me.
So we were going to church. We passed this kid walking down the sidewalk. We pull over. She pulls over to the gas station and says, I feel like I need to ask this dude if he wants to go to church with us.
I felt in that moment that it had come from God that was telling me that I needed to do it and I needed to be obedient.
I used to use. And I was on my way to the park to actually just give up and just go use again. And literally, you guys scurried your little car right there on the side of the road, like, hey, do you want to go to Journey Church with us? I know it might sound crazy, but do you want to go with us?
He sits there and hesitates for a minute, and he's like, yeah, must be a sign. Gets in the car, and then we go to church.
And something in my heart just told me, like, yeah, say yes. Say yes. You'll be dumb if you say no. Say yes. Go with them. And I'm like, okay, sure.
It was just a short drive to the Deltona campus. We don't live very far. Got to church.
I don't know, it was really welcoming and warm, and it made me feel good, you know, it made me feel like I belonged.
Took him, asked if we could take him to lunch just to get to know him a little bit better.
I went back to the place of origin that day and I threw away all paraphernalia after that and was like, all right, let's see what they're about. kind of was looking forward to like the next time I get to go to church with these two cool new people that I met, you know?
I texted him that week just to see if he was interested in going with us Sunday to church. So we went to church that Sunday. Pastor Tim talked about that they were going to do baptisms the next Sunday. And on our way out of church, Xavier said, you know, I think I'd like to be baptized. And I was like, okay. And that weekend he came to church with us again and got baptized.
Everybody can see the change that I'm going through now. And it started with coming to church, getting baptized, and walking in the light of God. You know, it's not just a group of people. It's everyone, everywhere, in every community. They can all see that I've made that conversion. You know, that's all I wanted, was for people to see how much I'm changing. As soon as I came up out of that water, it feels like you're being born again in a sense.
Like, I totally love doing this, but I really just don't feel like the story is over. I just don't. I feel like Xavier is just going to be this powerful example for his brothers of redemption and forgiveness and grace, and I think he's going to lead the way for his family. I truly believe that.
If y'all didn't stop on the side of the road, if y'all didn't stop on the side of the road, bruh, I'd probably be dead on a swing or on the slide, in all honesty. I was going for that. That was my goal. You know, I did not have a desire to live, but through the hope and grace of God, I found it again, you know? And I don't think I could ever thank you guys ever enough.